MH17 likely struck by multiple high-energy objects crash. Investigators say Dutch Safety Board report says objects caused aircraft to break up in the air. Pictures show holes, perhaps from a missile explosion, in fuselage. The Boeing-777 plunged out of the sky in July over pro-Russian rebel-held territory in Ukraine, killing all 298 passengers and crew on board. The Dutch Safety Board is leading the international investigation into the cause of the disaster. Its full report is expected within a year of the crash. Investigators have said Malaysia Airlines Flight MH17 broke up in the air over eastern Ukraine after it was struck by multiple high-energy objects from outside the aircraft. A newly released report contains pictures of the downed airliner showing holes in the fuselage which could have been caused by shrapnel from an exploding anti-aircraft missile. The carefully worded initial report avoids saying that the plane was shot down or making any suggestion as to who was responsible. A preliminary report into the disaster by the Dutch Safety Board said it was likely the damage caused resulted in a loss of structural integrity of the aircraft, leading to an in-flight breakup. The Boeing 777 suddenly plunged out of the sky on July 17 over pro-Russian rebel-held territory in Ukraine, killing all 298 passengers and crew on board. The report said, the damage observed in the forward section of the aircraft appears to indicate that the aircraft was penetrated by a large number of high-energy objects from outside the aircraft. It is likely that this damage resulted in a loss of structural integrity of the aircraft, leading to an in-flight breakup. The board is leading the international investigation into the cause of the disaster. Its full report is expected within a year of the crash. Pro-Russian rebels officially deny having shot down the plane, but unofficially one senior rebel admitted they were behind a missile strike. Just 3 hours before the plane was shot down above rebel-held territory in eastern Ukraine, the Associated Press reported on the passage of a Boeing-777 missile system, a machine the size of a tank bearing 4 ground-to-air missiles, driving through the rebel-held town of Schiphol, near the crash site. The Buk uses a proximity fuse aboard the missile that determines when it will detonate, creating an explosion of shrapnel to destroy the target. Just 3 hours before the plane was shot down above rebel-held territory in eastern Ukraine, the Associated Press reported on the passage of a Boeing-777 missile system, a machine the size of a tank bearing 4 ground-to-air missiles, driving through the rebel-held town of Schiphol, near the crash site. A highly placed rebel officer told the AP in an interview in the aftermath of the disaster that the plane was shot down by a mixed team of rebels and Russian military personnel who believed they were targeting a Ukrainian military plane. Intercepted phone conversations between the rebels released by the Ukrainian government support that version of events. In those tapes, the first rebels to reach the scene can be heard swearing when they see the number of bodies and the insignia of Malaysia Airlines. In a statement, the board's chairman Tjibbe Joustra said, the initial results of the investigation point toward an external cause of the MH17 crash. More research will be necessary to determine the cause with greater precision. The Safety Board believes that additional evidence will become available for investigation in the period ahead. Because of the ongoing conflict between pro-Russian rebels and Ukrainian forces, investigators from the board have not visited the fields where the wreckage of Flight 17 plunged to the ground. Detailed examination of the structural damage is ongoing, the report said. Forensic examination will be performed if the wreckage can be removed. Investigators so far have studied photos of the crash site, radar data and information gleaned from the downed jet's black boxes, its cockpit voice recorder and flight data recorder. They all indicated that there was no technical fault that may have caused the plane to disintegrate. The cockpit voice recorder revealed no signs of any technical faults or an emergency situation, the Safety Board said. Neither were any warning tones heard in the cockpit that might have pointed to technical problems. Christopher Yates, an aviation safety specialist at Yates Consulting, told the Associated Press the report is extremely consistent with damage from a missile for the simple reason there are penetration marks. It must have been moving at very high velocity to create the damage, he said. It could only be a missile of the type that would reach the altitude that would have struck the aircraft. He said the report gave no indication whether the missile had been fired from the ground or from another aircraft, but it likely came from the ground as there were no military aircraft known to have been flying at the time. The missile could not have been shoulder-fired because it would not have reached the necessary altitude, Yates added.